Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche Season Previews. We've got 7 videos coming your way previewing the Avs themselves and then all of the NHL divisions. It should be a fun season. I think we're ready for it. We're starting this year off with maybe the easiest conversation for the Avs this year, the goaltenders. But even that one isn't that straightforward as they're starting the season with no Pavel Francouz. We'll get to him in a little bit, but it looks like Justus Annunen is going to be the backup to start the season. Played in a couple games last year at the NHL level. The numbers aren't anything spectacular there, obviously. It's very small sample size. Where are you guys at with expectations for Justus this year? Is this he's just filling in for Francouz until Francouz gets back, or is this a real opportunity for Justus to push for a backup job?
I don't know that I believe it's either of those.
Somewhere in between.
I think it's somewhere in between because realistically, and I don't have Justus Annunen's development plan in front of me. I don't have the codes for the nukes.
If you could get that for us, that'd be great.
I do believe it would have been another year, though, before we were realistically having that conversation for Justus Annunen. I think he's on track in his development. I think he had a great year last year. It was very steady. He built a lot of confidence. And so I think he's right where they would have wanted him, but I think the injury to Pavel Francouz prompting this is a little sooner than they maybe would have expected for Justus. I think they wanted him to dominate a little bit more at the American League level before they were having conversations about him backing up someone like Georgiev. And as for Francouz, without knowing the prognosis for his injury, it just feels like they would rather use this as an opportunity to give Justus Annunen a lot of runway to show how he can hang at the NHL level. Because I just don't think we've seen enough of him at the NHL level to really know what that looks like. I think that Minnesota game last year where the team really rallied around him was a good one, and then the New Jersey one at home was a really bad one. Yeah. And the difference was largely the team that played in front of him because of the injuries to the Avs around that time. And so for that reason, I think we just need to see more from Justus Annunen this season, and then maybe next year we're having that conversation. And they then potentially look at other options, waiver wire, Eric's mentioned on other shows.
Sure.
For a more experienced NHL backup. And part of that is because part of Justus's development is better served getting in more games, and backing up Georgiev is not going to really get him those reps. And that is how he learns best. So that's sort of where I'm at with it all, and Justus and his role going into this next year.
Pretty much the same. I agree with Megan. I think the plan was for him to be in Loveland at the American League level. That was the plan, right? Of course, now Francouz is not ready. Who knows how long that's going to be. Unless they see something as a trade partner or on the waiver wire that they're able to do that makes sense for them, right? With their cap and their puzzle and everything else, they'll do it. But I do believe they're comfortable going with them, talking with, their people, and I'm comfortable with them. I agree. It would have been nice to have him in Loveland to get more experience, but I do believe he can take that next step and be that guy, especially early on when the first 40 games. So who knows? Like I said, I'm just speculating with Francouz, but I do believe he can take that next step, and it's an opportunity that probably he didn't expect, but might have to jump on. And I do believe he's got everything that a good backup can do at this level. And as a backup, we all know you get the crappy games, right? You do get the crappy games. You get the 3 and 4 nights. You get the back-to-backs, going in the hotel at 4 a.m., whatever it is. So I do believe you don't have to just look at his numbers, meaning wins and losses. And I do understand as a backup, you want to win games. But if he's capable of having good numbers, then he'll have more wins, more than losses. And I think it's just going to trickle down that effect. But I do believe that it wasn't expected, but I do believe he's up for the task.
I mean, he might get the crappy games, but he also gets San Jose, Anaheim, Chicago.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
He's going to get his matchups are going.
Yes.
I strongly doubt that he's going to get thrown to the wolves for the Carolina games like Francouz was last year, right? Where of course Frankie was incredible in both of those games. But like with Annunen, I mean, it's a shot as long as they really give it to him. And we don't record this video and they claim somebody on waivers over the next week, which
this one's gonna get posted tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. it's possible this happens, but
absolutely.
But if they give Annunen that opportunity for however long it may be, this is a shot, because if he shows well and he proves it, there is no conversation after this year about who the goaltender, who the backup to Georgiev will be. This is, if he comes in and he shows it, then you just roll into next year and you're like, it's Annunen's job. You don't need to go get a veteran. You just don't need to, because the point, the goal would be to, even going into this year, they may not have wanted that right away, but the goal would have been to transition from Francouz leaving in free agency at the end of this year to Annunen anyway, going into next year. This accelerates it a year, and hey, you're trying to win a Stanley Cup, so that matters. You don't know how much of a difference between Annunen and Francouz there is right now, and finding out will be an important part of this season. I see some people hand wave away whoever the backup goaltender is, but those guys play 20 to 25 games.
This is exactly where I want to go, and we can bring up Francouz's stats too here. I get we don't know when he'll be back, but Francouz played 16, Annunen played 2 last year. That's 18 games from guys that you were planning on potentially playing those backup games for you. Georgiev put in a pretty heavy workload last season.
Yeah.
Is that the expectation again? Do they need 60 games out of Georgiev this year, or do they want to bring that number down a little bit, whether that's within and in Francouz or getting someone else into that picture?
Well, of course you want to bring it down. You would love to keep that. You would love for your number one to be as fresh as possible going into the postseason while being in rhythm, while taking the starter's load. So, like, for me, I would say between 52 and 57 is probably my ideal for a starter.
Okay.
If you have a really good backup, it's more like 52.
Sure.
If you really don't trust your backup at all, it's more like 62. But we've seen with Winnipeg, Connor Hellebuck has run out of gas in the postseason multiple times in his career, because you're not trying to win a first-round series. You're trying to win 4 of them. It's 2 months worth of extra work. It is another 20 to 25 games that you're asking that guy to play, and you're not having the backup play games in the postseason. So, and with Francouz, I don't want to totally abandon his conversation here, but
for sure,
with Francouz, like, you do have that trust in him because he did it in your cup winning year. He goes 6-0 for you.
Yep.
Granted, he didn't play great in all,
but he won
in
games.
all 6 of those games, but he played well enough on the nights that he got in net to win. And when it comes to the playoffs, that's all you're trying to do. You just need to be good enough to win that day. And with Frankie, there's trust that he could do that. On any given day, he could do that. He could have a bad... That's why he was a backup and not a starter, because he could have the bad days. They were pretty predictable. You always knew one was coming. But that's who Frankie is, and that's what backup goalies are. That's why those guys aren't starters. And with Annunen, it's a total wild card right now.
It's true. Megan, I think we've talked a lot on the show over the last couple of years, honestly, about how, look, NHL players want to play. They very rarely are going to tell you, no, I'm not good to go tonight. How much of the onus on these decisions is on a Jared Bednar to say, hey, I want to make sure Georgiev gets X games of rest?
Oh, and it's heavily on his shoulder / UC Parkala's assessment of the goaltending situation, because in talking to someone like Georgiev last year about the workload, you could see that he's hungry for it to get in games. And so leaving it to him, he probably would try to play all 82, and it would be ill-advised, because it is a strenuous position that demands a lot of that athlete, and you don't want to break your goaltender. I mean, if like Vegas taught me anything about goaltending depth last year, it's extremely important, 1, to have it, and 2, not to ride, like, that's not necessarily the lesson from Vegas, but riding Georgiev solely would be a mistake. It's just, they're not going to have a path as easy to the cup as they did in the 2022 year, in my opinion, and I think they have to prepare for that, and that workload just gets even heavier at that point.
But I do believe, and I said it the other day, and I'll say it again, he might end up playing 60 again, which I'm fine with. And again, I'm older than you guys, and I know today's world doesn't really work that way.
You're used to goalies playing 70 on the regular.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm going to drop it to 60. Yeah, you got to feel good about it. I'll compromise. But I do believe, just because of Frankie, you know what I mean, not being there, and Eustace not really having the confidence of the coaching staff of being able to do it, I do believe the number will end up being closer to 60. I think on paper it's easier to just look at it and say, oh, okay, we're going to play him 55. And then as you get down, you're like, oh, God, we really need that game tonight. You know what I mean? Like, or next Friday, we really need that game. And then you change your thought process. I do believe, like they did last year, right, for all the reasons. with Frankie going down. And now I think Justus is more of a better known commodity than last year, right? Last year was really, now at least he's had a few games last year. He's had another camp this year. He's been around, more with the guys now. So I do believe, and again, that's if they don't get anybody on the waiver wire or they don't make a trade for. I do believe that it's going to be more closer to 60 for Georgiev. But I do believe that if your backup gives you a dozen wins, holy cow, that's well done.
And it's a great point. Jared Bednar has repeatedly proven if he feels like he needs a win, he will absolutely put his starter on both ends of a back-to-back.
I don't disagree with
he's
that.
He's done it time and time again. And if you feel that way, it's fine.
Yeah.
You just know that your goaltender will be burned out by the time you get to the postseason if you do it over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
So, like, in certain situations, and of course everything in life is situational, right? So it's, we've seen that, but a strong performance from Justus Annunen or later on in the season of Pavel Francouz is reason to give Georgiev nights off.
Well, like the Carolina game you said last year,
Yeah.
right? When Frank, it's the same thing. If Justus can get one of those games early on,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden he feels good about himself. The players feel good about him. You see Parkula, coaching staff, trickling down effect, and maybe he gets more. You know what I mean? And then you get going into a groove, and then you get more to the 55 number, give and take. You know what I mean?
Sure.
52
and
to 55. Whatever.
You're talking about Justus Annunen should get the second game of the season in San Jose. And if he goes into San Jose and he has a good game and it gets the confidence up and gets it going, that is how a coaching staff can put a player in position to succeed and work towards 12 wins. Because it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you get a backup goaltender and gives you 12 wins, Colorado's goal should be 50 wins, right? Yep. That's 100 points. You'll have some OTLs. You might have a couple of wins here and there, but your number going into the season should be right about 50. That gets you into the postseason. 100 points gets you into the playoffs. It just does.
Yep.
So your goal should be 50. If your backup goalie can give you 12, you only need 38 from Georgiev to get to your goal.
And look,
if he's going to play 60, 38 out of 60 is not asking for the moon from a starting goaltender.
And the opposite side of that, if Georgiev plays 60, that means their backup gets 22. If you're looking for 12 wins, that's marginally over 500.
12 and 10.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not a crazy ask.
No, it's not.
The other known quantity is UC Parkla, and extended time that Justus Annunen gets under his teaching is only going to be more valuable for him, because I think he has grown and learned so much from Peter Budaj and Loveland, but to get extended time with UC Parkla is just going to make Justus a better goaltender, and I think that is an added component to consider with Justus Annunen's development, spending more time with the Avs right now.
Let's shift to a bigger build with Georgiev. Can he take another step after a fantastic year last year for Colorado? Is there a guy that can compete for Vezinas in there, or is a repeat of last year more than good enough?
For my money, if he repeats last year, I'm thrilled. If there's an incremental step forward, there's not a big leap left. There just isn't.
Right.
If there's a big step forward that comes after that, he's prime Dominic Hasek. This is a very different conversation.
Dude's putting up 930s at that point.
Exactly. Like, you're like a 935 goaltender. Like, no. It's a small step that he would have available to him if he's capable of that. I don't know if he is or not. If he just got to last year, that's a top 10 goaltender.
Yep.
That's the 5th to 8th best goaltender in the league, somewhere in there. That's more than enough to win a Stanley Cup.
That's just fine.
That's fine. Like, that's exactly the kind of guy. And at his price point, I mean, you're getting great value out of him. So for me, I just would say I am asking for just do it again. If he does better than that, you're probably in contention for a President's Trophy. If he does a little bit worse, it depends on how much worse. There's a little bit of room there, but certainly you want to see him get better. The Avalanche aren't going to win a Stanley Cup without a better goaltending performance than they got in their cup-winning year. They're going to need the goalie more than they did that season.
Yep.
And Georgiev, I think, is more than capable of that. So I'm a big believer. Does he need to win a Vezina? Does he need to compete for a Vezina? No. If he does, you are talking about a President's Trophy caliber team.
Good to hear.
Well, one of my mottos was always like in the locker room before a game, even or better, even or better. You're on the road, right? Rowdy building. Let's come out the first 10 minutes, even or better. So I'm a big guy, even or better. So I agree with you, but I'm going to go step better. I think he can get to it. I think he has another level after a fantastic year last year. I do believe he can get that up just a little bit more, even though those numbers are absolutely phenomenal. Those are monster numbers. Those are awesome. I do believe he has that in him, and I do believe he beats it just by a little margin, and that's just great news for everybody in this room, everybody in the locker room, and all the fans around the world of the Avalanche, because he's going to be outstanding.
I think something, too, he didn't have the benefit of last season is more consistency in front of him. And so it was a learning lesson in, one, the way the Avs like to play and execute defensively. I remember him talking to the defensemen specifically to better understand their reads and what then he needs to anticipate as a goaltender. And so there was just that little bit of an adjustment last season, which I think he handled well. I'm not even going to kid myself that he still is adjusting to the way the Avs like to play. I think last year he demonstrated that he settled in very nicely in that role and got comfortable with the way the Avs like to play, but he didn't even get to see the best of the Avalanche team in front of him. And so that's where I think that step forward happens, is he just gets more support, because I think he did everything that was asked of him. But I think it just gets better from here if the team in front of him is a little bit healthier and a bit more consistent than in the personnel.
Definitely a fair ask for the Avs to have less than 600 man games lost in front of him this year, I think.
There you go.
And you're exactly right.
Seriously, it was like 450, man.
It's an
That's a
outrageous
monster number.
Yeah. It spiraled out of control last year.
Yeah.
And again, it's about that consistency, right? Not knowing which players are going to be playing in front of you on any given night. Maybe you don't know Brad Hunt's tendencies quite as well as a Cale Makar's or even a Josh Manson's. So it's always hard to get away from this conversation where goaltending statistics are really team statistics as much as they are a goaltender's statistics. It's just part of the equation. That's the reality. And as much as we think health can help the forwards and defense, it can certainly help the goaltending of Georgiev too. The Avs need him to be good. Honestly, the Avs probably need him to be very good. I don't know if the Avs need him to be great, but they would certainly take it. That's all I got for goalies. We good? All right. We have more videos coming your way every single day leading up to the season. We're breaking down the rest of the Avs lineup and division previews. So like and subscribe here on YouTube to keep up with all of it, and we will see you in the next video.